What if I told you there are entire Asian countries that Donald Trump wants out of the United States? Why is Trump targeting these nations? Is it about politics, immigration, or something much deeper? And what if your country is on this list? But before we dive in, let me warm you up with a simple question. What is the largest Asian country by population? Country 10, Nepal. When we think of Nepal, the first things that come to mind are the mighty Himalayas, serene Buddhist monasteries, and those brave Sherpas guiding climbers up Mount Everest. It's a country that radiates peace and simplicity. But surprisingly, Nepal has found itself tangled in America's tough immigration web under Trump's era. You might wonder, what did this peaceful nation do to end up on Trump's radar? Well, it wasn't about mountains or monks. It was about migration. Thousands of Nepalese immigrants, especially those on temporary protected status or TPS, suddenly found themselves under threat as Trump's administration moved to strip away these protections. Imagine living in the US for years, building a life, and one morning, being told it's time to pack up and leave. Scary, isn't it? Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Many Nepalese immigrants didn't just fly directly into the US. Some, desperate for a better life, took the dangerous route, flying to countries like Brazil or Ecuador, then crossing the treacherous jungles and deserts of Central America, all the way to the Mexico-US border. Yes, you heard that right. Nepalese people, known for climbing the world's tallest peak, found themselves tackling an entirely different challenge, crossing illegally into America. And honestly, as one Nepalese guy joked, climbing Everest was tough, but crossing US immigration under Trump? That's the real death zone. But why is this important? Because Nepal's story is just the beginning. If a peaceful nation like Nepal, with barely any political baggage, landed on Trump's target list, just imagine who's coming next. What if the next country is larger, louder, or more controversial? Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming, because the deeper we go, the more shocking this list gets. Stay with me, because number 9 might just surprise you. Country 9, Bangladesh. Now let's talk about Bangladesh, a country known for its rich culture, endless rivers, and of course the world's largest mangrove forest, the Sundarbans. But beyond the beauty lies a growing diaspora that caught the attention of the Trump administration. Believe it or not, Bangladesh has become one of the fastest-growing immigrant groups in the United States over the past decade. Yet, with growth came scrutiny. Trump's team often flagged Bangladeshis for visa overstays and illegal crossings, especially through the Mexico border, a route that's become dangerously common. ICE raids increased, and many undocumented Bangladeshis faced sudden deportations. And you know what's funny? In America, they weren't worried about the floods back in Bangladesh, but the flood of paperwork every time ICE came knocking at the door. But what made it worse? Even those who came legally weren't safe. Imagine working hard, paying taxes, building a life, and still living in fear of a knock at the door. Suspicious eyes, constant checkups, and rising hate left many Bangladeshis feeling like strangers in the land they once called their American dream. And if you think that's bad, just wait. The next country on this list, even their students, yes, students, weren't spared. Stick around because it only gets more intense from here. Country 8, India. Now, this one might surprise many of you. India. Yes, the world's largest democracy and a so-called strong ally of the United States wasn't exactly safe when Trump decided to tighten his immigration grip. Despite the flashy handshakes and photo ops between leaders, the reality on the ground was far different. Under Trump's presidency, the famous H-1B visa, the golden ticket for Indian tech workers, became a major target. Restrictions tightened, rejections soared, and suddenly thousands of skilled Indian professionals, many of whom helped build the very backbone of Silicon Valley, found themselves in limbo. And isn't it ironic? Indians helped design the apps Americans use daily, but Trump still wanted to log them out. What's more shocking is that while legal pathways shrunk, illegal immigration from India quietly doubled. Yep, you heard that right. Desperate to chase the American dream, many Indians started taking the backdoor route, some even crossing the Mexico border, much like their South Asian neighbors. ICE records show a rising number of illegal Indian immigrants being caught and detained. And let's be honest, you wouldn't expect to see a Punjabi farmer or a Gujarati businessman hiking through the Arizona desert, right? But that's how intense the struggle became. It wasn't just about jobs anymore. It became a race for survival in a land that once promised endless opportunity. And here's the kicker. If India, a tech powerhouse and America's strategic partner, faced the heat, just imagine what happened to the countries with even more complicated relations. What if I tell you the next country on this list saw their brightest minds, students, being labeled as potential threats? Yeah, it's about to get even more shocking. Stay tuned. Number 7. China. Coming in at number 7 is none other than China, the global superpower locked in a constant love-hate relationship with the United States. Under Trump's presidency, things took a dramatic turn as the infamous trade war erupted, with billions of dollars in tariffs slapped on Chinese goods. But it wasn't just about products and profits. Suddenly, people became targets too. Chinese students, who once made up the largest group of international scholars in the US, found themselves under a magnifying glass. Accusations of espionage surfaced, with the Trump administration hinting that even those in lab coats might be gathering secrets rather than test results. And honestly, who needs James Bond when you've got a Chinese PhD student researching artificial intelligence? The atmosphere grew tense. Visa approvals for Chinese students slowed down, while existing scholars were quietly sent back home. Universities across America, which once welcomed Chinese talent with open arms, started receiving subtle warnings. And here's the shocking part. Many of these students weren't even studying sensitive topics like nuclear science or cybersecurity. Some were there for business, arts, even literature. Still, suspicion didn't spare anyone. Deportations increased, but most of it stayed under the radar, avoiding the headlines. For many Chinese families, sending their child to study in America, once a proud moment, suddenly became a terrifying gamble. Now, if China, with its global influence and billion-dollar trade ties, could face this level of scrutiny, imagine the fear running through smaller countries. What's worse? The next country on this list is stuck right between the US and China, politically, geographically, and economically. And trust me, the way their story unfolds will make you wonder, is anyone really safe in this immigration game? Stay with me. Country 6. Vietnam. Next on the list is Vietnam, a country with a complicated and emotional history when it comes to the United States. After the Vietnam War, tens of thousands of Vietnamese refugees fled to America seeking safety and a fresh start. Over the decades, they built strong communities, raised families, and became part of the American fabric. But under Trump's immigration crackdown, even this deeply rooted community wasn't spared. Shockingly, deportation flights to Vietnam were restarted. And we're not talking about recent arrivals here. Many of those targeted had lived in the US for 20, even 30 years, with homes, kids, and entire lives built in America. What made this even more heartbreaking was the fact that many of these Vietnamese immigrants had absolutely no ties left to their homeland. Some were sent back to a country they couldn't even remember. No family, no friends, no place to go. Imagine living your whole life in the US, only to be forcibly returned to a land that feels more foreign than home. It's like being dropped off in the middle of nowhere with a good luck wave. And here's the irony. Some of those facing deportation had once helped the US during the war, only to be abandoned decades later. Emotional, right? But that's how cruel politics can be when it comes to immigration. And if you think that's intense, trust me, it's about to get even more serious. Because the next country on Trump's radar? It's one he didn't just hint at. He straight up called it a major problem. And what's even scarier? This country has nuclear weapons, global influence, and a long, messy history with the US. You don't want to miss this next one. Number 5. Pakistan. At number 5, we have Pakistan, a country that's been walking a diplomatic tightrope with the United States for decades. But under Trump's presidency, that rope got thinner and a whole lot shakier. Pakistanis suddenly found themselves facing severe travel restrictions and visa denials, almost overnight. Trump didn't hold back either, publicly accusing Pakistan of giving safe haven to terrorists and blaming them for America's troubles in Afghanistan. And once you're labeled like that by a sitting US president, well, good luck getting through immigration. Even students, skilled workers, and business people from Pakistan faced increasing scrutiny. Visa interviews became interrogations, and background checks went deeper than ever. What's worse? Many innocent Pakistanis, with zero connection to anything remotely political, got caught in this mess. Skilled engineers, IT professionals, and even cricket players found themselves stuck in endless paperwork. And you know it's bad when even a Pakistani cricketer jokes, "We need a second passport just to clear US immigration." And maybe a helmet too, because the questions feel like bouncers. The impact was devastating for families separated, businesses stalled, and students forced to abandon their American dreams. It wasn't about security anymore. It felt like collective punishment. And trust me, that left a lasting fear in the community. What if the next knock on the door wasn't an invitation, but a deportation order? But hang on, because if you think Pakistan's troubles were intense, just wait till you hear about the next country. A nation so tiny you might miss it on the map. But the problem they faced was massive. In fact, what happened to them after a deadly event shook the world will make you wonder, is any country really safe from being blacklisted? Stay with me, because this next story is nothing short of shocking.
Number 4. Sri Lanka. Coming in at number 4 is Sri Lanka, the beautiful island nation known for its tea, scenic beaches, and rich cultural heritage. But in 2019, everything changed overnight. The devastating Easter bombings rocked the country, leaving nearly 300 people dead and the world in shock. And like a ripple effect, the tragedy crossed oceans and triggered intense scrutiny from the US government. Almost immediately, Sri Lankan citizens, students, tourists, even long-time visa holders, found themselves facing new hurdles. Background checks became deeper, interviews turned harsher, and visa denials started rising. It was as if an entire nation was suddenly placed under a silent watch list. For many innocent Sri Lankans, it was a nightmare they never saw coming. Families hoping to reunite, students chasing the American dream, or even tourists looking to visit Disneyland, all now painted with the same broad brush of suspicion. And the worst part, there were no official announcements, no clear reasons, just a tightening grip that made every Sri Lankan applicant wonder if they'd ever set foot on US soil. And honestly, the irony is hard to miss. One minute you're sipping Ceylon tea, and the next, you're caught up in America's immigration dragnet. Fear replaced hope, and suddenly, that visa approval email felt as rare as finding treasure buried under Sigiriya rock. But here's where it gets even more interesting. If a peaceful island nation like Sri Lanka could get tangled in America's immigration mess, imagine what happened to one of America's oldest allies in Asia, a country known for sending millions of its people to work, live, and even serve in the US. What if I told you that country is next on Trump's radar? Stick around, because this one's going to hit harder than you think. Country 3, Philippines. Now, landing at number 3 is the Philippines, a country that most Americans associate with warm smiles, world-class caregivers, and, of course, the famous Jollibee fried chicken. But surprisingly, even Filipinos found themselves caught in Trump's immigration crackdown. Despite being one of America's oldest allies in Asia, the Philippines didn't get a free pass. Under Trump's administration, visa restrictions tightened, and deportations started creeping up. The major reason: the US flagged the Philippines for high rates of visa overstays and illegal entries. In simple terms, too many Filipinos arrived legally but stayed longer than allowed. And funny enough, while Americans lined up for Jollibee, Trump's team made it clear they weren't loving it when that combo came with an expired visa. What made it even more heartbreaking was who this crackdown impacted the most: caregivers, nurses, domestic workers, the very people caring for America's elderly, sick, and children. These hard-working Filipinos, who spent years building lives, families, and careers in the U.S., suddenly found themselves at risk of being kicked out. Trump even considered ending the Temporary Protected Status (TPS) program for Filipinos, a move that would have sent thousands back overnight. Just imagine being a nurse in a U.S. hospital for 15 years, only to wake up one morning wondering if you'll be deported next week. It wasn't just policy, it became personal for thousands of Filipino families living in fear. And if you think that's shocking, trust me, what's coming next will leave you speechless. The next country on this list has a complicated history with the U.S., a growing presence, and to make things worse, they are already on the global watch list. You'll never guess who it is, but once you hear it, it'll all make sense. Stay with me, the countdown is getting intense. Country 2, Iran. Sliding into the number 2 spot is Iran, a country that's been at the center of US foreign policy battles for decades. But under Trump's presidency, things escalated to an entirely new level. Iran was placed on the infamous Muslim ban list, officially known as the travel ban, which slammed the door shut on nearly all Iranian travelers. Tourist visas denied, student visas denied, even family reunions denied. It didn't matter if you were a brilliant student heading to MIT or just a grandmother trying to visit her grandchildren. If you held an Iranian passport, you were suddenly persona non grata. At that point, even Persian cats probably had a hard time getting into the U.S., and trust me, they weren't happy about it. The emotional toll was devastating. Families who had waited years to reunite were forced to cancel weddings, funerals, and once-in-a-lifetime moments. Iranian American citizens found themselves stranded, unable to bring their spouses or parents to the U.S. because of a blanket policy that painted everyone with the same brush. And what's worse, the ban fueled stereotypes and fear, leaving thousands of innocent Iranians facing suspicion simply because of where they were born. For many, the American dream was replaced with American disappointment, and the scars of that ban still linger in Iranian communities across the US. Now, if you think Iran's story is shocking, brace yourself, because the country that tops Trump's list, it's a nation torn apart by war, drowning in chaos, and desperately clinging to whatever hope remains. A place where US troops once fought side by side with locals, only for those same allies to be left behind when things got ugly. The number 1 country Trump didn't want in America is Afghanistan, and the reason why will leave you questioning everything about loyalty, promises, and the true cost of war. Stay with me, because what happened to the Afghans isn't just a political move, it's a humanitarian tragedy that still haunts thousands of families. And trust me, by the time you hear what went down, you'll be wondering, did America turn its back on the very people who risked everything for the US dream? Let's dive into it. Number 1, Afghanistan. Finally, topping the list is Afghanistan, a country that's seen more war, conflict, and foreign involvement than most of us can imagine. After 2 decades of US military presence, thousands of Afghans worked side by side with American troops as translators, guides, and allies, risking their lives every single day. Naturally, When the war escalated, refugee numbers and visa applications from Afghanistan skyrocketed. But instead of welcoming those who had literally bled for America, Trump's administration slammed the brakes. Refugee quotas for Afghans were slashed. Special visa programs slowed to a crawl. And suddenly, those promised safety were left stranded, abandoned in a country crumbling under chaos. What made this even more heartbreaking was the betrayal. Imagine serving shoulder to shoulder with US forces, only to hear that the door you were promised would be open was now locked. Families who had waited for years, hiding from the Taliban because of their American ties, were told to wait their turn, a turn that might never come. Many Afghans, with their lives in danger, tried crossing borders illegally, only to face detention centers, deportation threats, or worse. And honestly, the irony here is brutal. America spent trillions on the war, but couldn't spare a safe place for the very people who helped them fight it. And now, I'll leave you with this question: is this fair? Is it fair that the very allies who stood by America when it mattered most were left behind when they needed help? Let me know what you think in the comments, because this is where politics gets personal. And trust me, this story doesn't just end here. In the next video, we'll dive into countries Trump secretly blacklisted but never made the headlines. You don't want to miss that, so stay tuned. And there you have it, 10 Asian countries that found themselves caught in the crosshairs of Trump's hardline immigration policies. From peaceful Nepalese climbers to hardworking Filipino nurses, brilliant Indian techies to Afghan allies left stranded, each story paints a powerful picture of how politics, fear, and suspicion can change lives in an instant. The shocking part: many of these people weren't criminals or threats, they were students, caregivers, workers, and families simply chasing the American dream. But under Trump's America First agenda, dreams were replaced with deportation orders, visa bans, and a future filled with uncertainty. Now, the real question is, what do you think? Were these policies justified in the name of national security? Or did they go too far, punishing innocent people? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I read every one of them. And if you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because in my next video, we are digging even deeper, exposing the countries secretly blacklisted without the world knowing. Trust me, you won't want to miss that. Until then, stay curious and stay informed.